Marcus Aurelius never ruled from a place of comfort. He ruled while sick, while betrayed, while surrounded by war, famine, and political decay. Yet when you read his private journal, the book we now call Meditations, you do not find a man complaining about how unfair life was to him. You find something far more unsettling. A man who believed that complaining itself was a kind of surrender, not surrender to fate, but surrender of the mind. To Marcus Aurelius, every complaint was a quiet confession of inner weakness. Imagine the weight on his shoulders. He was emperor of the most powerful empire on earth, yet he slept in military tents on frozen battlefields. His body was fragile, his stomach constantly ill, his joints aching. He lost children, trusted friends, and even his CEO ruler betrayed him. If anyone had a reason to complain, it was Marcus Aurelius. But instead of asking why this was happening to him, he asked a far more dangerous question. What part of this is within my control, and what part is not? For Marcus, complaining was dangerous because it confused these two worlds. When a person complains, they are not simply describing pain. They are demanding reality to be different from what it is. They are arguing with nature, with fate, with the structure of existence itself. And in Stoic philosophy, this is where suffering truly begins. Not in the event, but in the resistance to the event. Marcus believed that the universe operates according to reason. Everything that happens follows causes stretching far beyond our understanding. When we complain, we place our personal comfort above this greater order. We say, consciously or unconsciously, that reality should bend to our preferences. To Marcus Aurelius, this was not strength, this was childishness disguised as protest. He wrote that it is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Complaining is nothing more than judgment spoken aloud. It is the mind saying, this should not be happening, I deserve better, this is unfair. And once the mind adopts this posture, it becomes weak, reactive, and dependent. It stops adapting and starts resisting. It stops leading and starts whining. Marcus saw complaining as a habit that corrodes character. The more a person complains, the more they train their mind to focus on what is wrong rather than what must be done. Complaining feels like action, but it produces nothing. It drains energy without creating strength. For a Stoic emperor responsible for millions of lives, this was unacceptable. Complaining did not solve plagues. Complaining did not win wars. Complaining did not heal grief. Discipline did. There is a moment Marcus describes where he wakes up in the morning and feels the weight of duty pressing down on him. His body wants to stay in bed. His mind wants comfort. And yet he reminds himself that he was born to work for the common good. In this moment, complaining would have been easy. He could have said, life is too hard, my burden is unfair, I deserve rest. Instead, he reframed the discomfort as evidence that he was living according to his purpose. This is why Marcus Aurelius believed complaining was weakness, because it shifts responsibility away from the self. The moment you complain, you place yourself below circumstances. You become a victim of events rather than a participant in them. And for the Stoics, nothing was more degrading to the human soul than voluntary helplessness. Marcus did not deny pain. He did not pretend suffering did not exist. What he rejected was the theatrical display of suffering. He believed that how you carry pain reveals your character. Two people can experience the same hardship. One complains and collapses inward. The other accepts and grows outward. The difference is not luck, it is philosophy lived in action. Complaining also infects others. Marcus understood leadership deeply. He knew that mood spread faster than ideas. A leader who complains teaches others to complain. A mind that resists reality invites chaos. This is why he trained himself to meet hardship with calm acknowledgement rather than emotional protest. Not because he was emotionless, but because he refused to let emotion rule him. At its core, Marcus Aurelius believed that strength is the ability to remain internally ordered while the external world is chaotic. Complaining reverses this order. It allows the external to dominate the internal. It hands power to circumstances and strips it from the self. To Marcus, this was not just weakness, it was a betrayal of human potential. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Complaining often feels justified, it feels human, it feels honest. But Marcus would ask you this: does it make you better, or does it make you smaller? Does it sharpen your judgment or dull it? Does it move you forward or anchor you to resentment? This is where his philosophy becomes dangerous to modern comfort, because Marcus Aurelius does not offer sympathy for self-pity. He offers responsibility. He asks you to rise above the instinct to protest and instead discipline the mind to accept, adapt, and act. For him, silence in the face of hardship was not repression, it was mastery. And mastery, in Stoic philosophy, is the highest form of freedom. Marcus Aurelius understood something most people never confront. Complaining does not remove pain, it multiplies it. The original hardship is one thing, but the mental narration we attach to it creates a second wound, and that second wound is entirely optional. Marcus trained himself to cut it out when something went wrong in his empire, and many things always did. He did not say this should not be happening. He said, this is happening, now what does reason demand of me? That single shift separates the weak from the resilient. Complaining keeps you stuck in the moment of injury. Acceptance moves you into the moment of response. Marcus believed the human mind is like a fortress. External events are always trying to breach its walls: war, illness, betrayal, loss, failure. These things are inevitable. Complaining is the act of opening the gate from the inside. It invites chaos to settle in your thoughts. Once inside, it rearranges how you see yourself and the world. You stop seeing challenges as tests of character and start seeing them as punishments. For Marcus Aurelius, this mental collapse was more dangerous than any external enemy. Rome could survive invasions. It could survive famine. What it could not survive was leaders ruled by resentment and self-pity. So Marcus disciplined his inner dialogue mercilessly. When his mind began to complain, he questioned it like a hostile witness. What exactly are you upset about? Is this within your control? If it is, why are you talking instead of acting? If it is not, why are you resisting what cannot be changed? This is why Stoicism sounds harsh to modern ears. Marcus Aurelius did not believe you were entitled to comfort. He believed you were entitled to the chance to act virtuously. Everything else was secondary. Complaining assumes the world owes you ease. Marcus believed the world owes you nothing but reality. He wrote reminders to himself, not to others. Do not be overheard complaining, not even to yourself. That line is brutal because it exposes how deeply complaining is tied to identity. Most people complain internally all day long. They rehearse grievances, replay insults, argue with the past. Marcus saw this as self-inflict. De-imprisonment. A mind trapped in complaint cannot be free. What made his view radical was that he applied it even to injustice. He faced corruption, lies, and disloyalty. Yet he reminded himself that people act according to their nature and understanding. Expecting them to behave otherwise was foolish. Complaining about human behavior was like complaining that fire burns or rain falls. To Marcus, wisdom meant aligning expectations with reality, not fantasy. This does not mean he approved of wrongdoing. It means he refused to poison his mind while correcting it. Complaining clouds judgment. Anger distorts reason. Marcus believed that to respond effectively, the mind must remain clear. You cannot fix what you resent blindly. You can only fix what you see accurately. There is a powerful moment in his writings where he reflects on death. He reminds himself that soon he will be gone, as will everyone who praises or criticizes him. In that vast perspective, complaints shrink into absurdity. What is the point of protesting a temporary discomfort in a temporary life? For Marcus, remembering mortality was not depressing. It was clarifying. It stripped complaints of their false importance. Complaining also ties your happiness to conditions. Marcus rejected this completely. He believed that a person who depends on smooth circumstances for peace is already enslaved. True strength was being sufficient unto oneself. Calm not because life is easy, but because the mind is trained. He compared the mind to a fire. Obstacles are fuel, complaints are water. When hardship arrives, you can either extinguish your inner fire or feed it. The Stoic does not ask, why is this happening to me? He asks, how can this serve my discipline, my patience, my courage? Marcus Aurelius believed that every difficulty carries an invitation, not to suffer louder but to grow quieter and stronger. Comply. Ning rejects the invitation. It says, I refuse the lesson. I want comfort instead of character. This is why Marcus treated complaining as weakness. Not moral weakness, but mental weakness, the inability to endure reality without emotional collapse, the inability to stand upright when circumstances lean against you. In his view, strength was not loud. It did not announce itself. It endured. And this endurance was not passive. It was active self-command. Marcus did not suppress emotion. He governed it. He allowed pain to exist without allowing it to rule. That distinction is everything. Most people believe complaining helps them release tension. Marcus believed it tightens the knot. The more you complain, the more you reinforce the story that you are wronged and powerless. Over time, the mind begins to look for new reasons to complain because it has been trained to survive that way. Marcus Aurelius chose a different training, one that built resilience instead of resentment, one that replaced protest with purpose. And in doing so, he left us a philosophy not meant to comfort us, but to strengthen us. Marcus Aurelius believed that suffering reveals, not destroys. It exposes the quality of your inner structure. When pressure arrives, whatever is weak collapses, whatever is strong holds. Complaining, in his view, was the sound of collapse. It was the mind buckling under weight it refuses to carry. He watched this happen constantly in others. Senators who panicked when their status was threatened, generals who blamed circumstances for their failures, citizens who cursed the gods for misfortune. Marcus saw a pattern. Those who complained the most were often the least capable of action. Their energy was spent narrating their pain instead of transforming it. Marcus did not romanticize suffering. He did not seek it. But he refused to fear it. He believed fear amplifies far more than pain itself. Complaining is fear speaking out loud. It is the voice that says, this is too much, I cannot handle this, I should not have to endure this. And once that voice dominates, the mind retreats. He trained himself to meet suffering with analysis rather than emotion. What is this really? Is it unbearable or merely unpleasant? Is it permanent or temporary? Is it harming my character or simply my comfort? These questions dismantled suffering at its root. Complaining never asks questions, it only repeats accusations. One of Marcus Aurelius's most striking beliefs was that nothing external can truly harm you unless you allow it to corrupt your inner world. Illness can weaken the body, loss can break routines, betrayal can change circumstances, but only your judgments can damage your integrity. Complaining hands over that power willingly. When Marcus lost his children, he did not complain to the universe. He reminded himself that all life is borrowed, never owned. That love includes loss by its very nature. This did not remove grief, but it prevented despair. Complaining would have added a layer of injustice to an already painful truth. Acceptance allowed grief to pass without poisoning his soul. He believed that nature never gives a burden without also giving the capacity to bear it. To complain is to accuse nature of cruelty or incompetence. Marcus rejected this accusation. He believed that if something had come to him, it had come because he was capable of facing it. This belief alone transforms suffering into responsibility. Marcus also understood how complaint distorts memory. When you complain, you rewrite the story of your life as a sequence of injuries. You forget the moments of strength, endurance, and growth. You begin to see yourself as unlucky rather than resilient. Over time, this narrative becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. For a Stoic, identity must be chosen deliberately. Marcus chose to see himself as a rational being living in accordance with nature. Complaining contradicted that identity. It made him smaller than events rather than equal to them. He refused that posture. He often reminded himself that many of the things people complain about were once things they prayed for: power, responsibility, recognition, challenge. When they arrive with difficulty, the mind rebels. Marcus saw this as a failure of perspective. If you desire the fruits, you must accept the labor. complaining about the labor while enjoying the fruits is hypocrisy. He also believed complaining weakens justice. When you approach problems emotionally, you overreact or withdraw. When you approach them calmly, you act proportionately. Marcus needed proportionality. An emperor ruled by complaint would rule by impulse. That kind of rule destroys societies. Marcus Aurelius did not want to be remembered as a man who suffered loudly. He wanted to be a man who remained intact, whole, ordered, reasonable, even when everything around him was fractured. This is why his writings feel so intimate. They are not speeches, they are corrections. He caught himself complaining internally and dismantled the thought before it grew roots. This discipline was constant. Strength to Marcus was not a trait, it was a practice. He knew complaining feels natural. So does laziness, so does anger. Nature gives instincts, but reason gives direction. Complaining is what happens when instinct overrules reason. Stoicism is the training that restores command. Marcus Aurelius believed that the highest form of dignity is silent endurance paired with right action. Not silence born of fear, but silence born of clarity. The kind of silence that says, I see this clearly and I will not be ruled by it. And when you adopt this posture, something profound happens. Hardship loses its power to humiliate you. Pain no longer defines you. Circumstances become challenges rather than verdicts. This is the strength Marcus Aurelius sought, not the absence of pain but the presence of mastery. Marcus Aurelius understood that discipline does not collapse suddenly, it erodes quietly. And one of the fastest ways it erodes is through habitual complaining. Not dramatic outbursts, but small internal protests repeated every day. He believed these small protests train the mind to resist effort itself. When you complain about waking up early, you weaken your commitment to duty. When you complain about responsibility, you weaken your sense of purpose. When you complain about people, you weaken your ability to cooperate with human nature as it is. Marcus saw all of this as a chain reaction. One unchallenged complaint leads to another, until discipline dissolves. He reminded himself constantly that he was made for action, not comfort. This was not a slogan. It was a biological and philosophical claim. Just as a knife is made to cut and an eye is made to see, the human being is made to act rationally for the common good. Complaining distracts from this function. It turns attention inward toward irritation instead of outward toward contribution. Marcus believed that purpose is the strongest antidote to complaint. A person who knows why they are doing something has little interest in whining about how hard it is. Complaining thrives in minds that have lost sight of meaning. When effort feels pointless, suffering feels unfair. But when effort is connected to purpose, suffering becomes tolerable. He also recognized that complaining fractures inner unity. One part of the mind wants to do what is right. Another part wants ease. Complaining gives power to the weaker part. It creates internal civil war. Marcus sought harmony in himself. Reason must lead. Appetite must follow. Complaining reverses this order. Marcus wrote to himself that you can either be carried by events or carried forward by them. Complaining is being dragged. Acceptance is learning how to walk with the weight. He refused to be dragged, no matter how heavy the load became. He was especially wary of moral complaining. Complaints disguised as virtue. Saying, I am angry because this is unjust. Marcus believed justice must be pursued without hatred. The moment you add resentment, you compromise clarity. You turn moral action into emotional reaction. He understood that many people complain because they want validation. They want their pain acknowledged. Marcus did not deny the human need to be seen, but he believed self-validation was stronger than external sympathy. When you approve of your own endurance, you do not need applause for your suffering. Complaining also erodes gratitude. A mind focused on what is wrong becomes blind to what remains good. Marcus deliberately practiced noticing what still functioned, his breath, his reason, his ability to choose. As long as these remained, life was still workable. He believed freedom was internal. You could be imprisoned, ill, or defeated, and still free if your mind remained aligned with reason. Complaining surrenders that freedom voluntarily. It chains happiness to outcomes. Marcus refused those chains. There is a quiet confidence in his writing that comes from this refusal. He does not beg the universe to be kind. He prepares himself to be resilient. This is why his philosophy endures. It does not promise protection, it promises strength. Marcus also understood time. He knew every hardship would pass, either through resolution or through death. Complaining stretches the moment artificially. It keeps pain alive long after its practical impact has ended. Acceptance allows me to do its work. He trained himself to see obstacles as raw material. Every delay tested patience. Every insult tested restraint. Every loss tested detachment. Complaining rejected these tests. Marcus welcomed them, not because they were pleasant, but because they sharpened him. To Marcus Aurelius, the disciplined mind was sacred. It was the only thing truly owned. Everything else could be taken. Complaining was a form of neglect. It allowed weeds to grow where order should be. He believed that greatness was not loud. It did not announce itself through outrage. It showed itself through consistency, through showing up without protest, through doing what must be done even when it is uncomfortable. And here lies the deeper reason Marcus Aurelius believed complaining was weakness. Because strength is doing what is required without demanding special treatment from reality. The world does not owe us ease. It offers us a field of action. What we do in that field defines us. Marcus Aurelius knew that some of the strongest impulses to complain arise not from events, but from people, from arrogance, dishonesty, laziness, cruelty. He faced these daily, not as a philosopher in isolation, but as an emperor surrounded by ambition and betrayal. And yet, he warned himself never to be surprised by human behavior. Each morning he prepared his mind by reminding himself that he would encounter selfishness and ignorance. Not as a pessimistic ritual, but as a psychological defense. When you expect perfection, you complain endlessly. When you expect reality, you remain steady. Marcus believed that people act according to their understanding of good. When they harm others, it is not because they love evil, but because they are confused about what truly benefits them. Complaining about them does nothing to correct that confusion, it only deepens your own. He also understood that king offense is a choice. Insults do not enter the mind unless invited. Complaining about disrespect gives power to the offender. It allows their behavior to dictate your internal state. Marcus refused to grant that authority. This is why he emphasized inner sovereignty. No one can harm you without your consent, he reminded himself. They can damage your body, your reputation, your position, but they cannot damage your character unless you allow resentment to take root. Marcus distinguished between correcting injustice and resenting it. Correction is rational. Resentment is emotional indulgence. Complaining lives in resentment. Justice lives in action. He believed that unfair treatment was not an exception in life, but a feature of it. Expecting fairness from every person is like expecting calm seas in every voyage. The wise sailor prepares for storms rather than complaining about the weather. Marcus also recognized that many people use complaint as a form of moral superiority. By complaining about others, they signal virtue without practicing it. Marcus rejected this completely. Virtue is not demonstrated by condemnation, but by example. He wrote that the best revenge is to not be like the one who wronged you. Complaining pulls you down to their level. It mirrors their disorder. Remaining calm preserves your difference. He was especially wary of anger masquerading as righteousness. Anger feels powerful, but it clouds judgment. Marcus needed clarity more than emotional release. He trained himself to pause, examine and respond proportionately. Marcus Aurelius believed that tolerance was not weakness, it was strength under control. It allowed him to coexist with flawed people without becoming flawed himself. He also saw how complaining poisons cooperation. Teams break down when blame replaces responsibility. Societies fracture when outrage replaces reason. Marcus believed leadership required emotional restraint above all else. He did not excuse wrongdoing. He addressed it firmly, but he did so without internal chaos. That balance is rare. It requires discipline most people never develop. For Marcus, every difficult person was a training partner. They tested patience, humility, and self-command. Complaining rejected this training. Acceptance turned irritation into practice. He reminded himself that life is too short to spend energy on resentment. Time wasted complaining could be used improving oneself or serving others. This calculation made complaint feel absurd. Marcus Aurelius believed that dignity is not something others give you, it is something you maintain, and complaining hands it away piece by piece. This is why he treated inner peace as a duty, not a luxury. His role demanded stability. His philosophy demanded consistency. In the end, Marcus saw complaining about people as a refusal to accept humanity as it is. Wisdom begins when expectations align with reality, and, when expectations align, strength becomes possible. Marcus Aurelius understood that complaining is deeply tied to fear. Fear of discomfort, fear of failure, fear of judgment. Every complaint contains a whisper of, "This might hurt me, this might make me look weak, this might rob me of control." He saw that giving in to that whisper was giving up mastery over oneself. He wrote constantly about control because to him, the mind is the one domain we can always govern. Bodies break, fortunes vanish, allies betray, yet reason remains. Complaining, Marcus realized, is surrendering reason to circumstance. It is the ego begging for safety, even at the cost of strength. Ego loves to complain. It wants the world to acknowledge injustice, to validate suffering, to confirm that you deserve better. Marcus saw through this. Ego is not truth. Ego is self-inflated. Perception. Complaining is a symptom of a mind dominated by ego rather than guided by reason. He understood that the desire for control is universal. We wish reality to conform to our plans, to our expectations, to our preferences. Complaints are born of this desire. Every time we say this is unfair, we are asserting our right to command the universe. Marcus calls this folly. The universe obeys no one. The only power lies in how you respond. Marcus also observed that complaint is a form of impatience. Life unfolds according to laws larger than personal preference. When we complain, we act as if the pace of events should bend to our will. Stoicism teaches patience, the recognition that the order of things is beyond us, but our action within it is not. He often reflected on the impermanence of all things. Pain, difficulty, loss, they are temporary visitors. Complaining treats them as permanent tyrants. Marcus refused to give temporary events eternal power over his mind. He trained himself to measure hardship with the scale of time, perspective, and reason. Marcus also associated complaining with a subtle form of arrogance. The belief that the world should cater to you, that events should pause for your convenience. Life does not pause. People will act selfishly. Nature will not wait. Complaining assumes entitlement where none exists. Marcus believed entitlement was weakness masquerading as strength. He encouraged examining complaints with a strict question, is this within my control or is it not? If within control, act decisively. If not, let it go. Complaints exist in the space between reality and expectation. Shrink that space and the need to complain disappears. Marcus observed that most complaints are repetitive. People complain about the same problems over and over, as if the act itself could change reality. He warned himself against this trap. Action changes. Reality. Words alone, especially words of protest, change nothing. Complaining reinforces helplessness. Acting reinforces strength. At its core, Marcus Aurelius's philosophy teaches that complaints are the mind betraying itself. Every complaint is a tiny rebellion against your own capacity to endure, to think, and to act. The Stoic mind must recognize the futility of this rebellion and redirect energy to mastery. He wanted every moment, no matter how painful, to be an opportunity to exercise reason, courage, and patience. Complaining robs these opportunities. It turns hardship into distraction instead of practice. And that, to Marcus, was the essence of weakness. Marcus Aurelius knew that complaining does more than reveal weakness, it diminishes virtue. Virtue is the practice of acting rightly in every circumstance. Complaints, however, shift attention from action to grievance. They make the mind linger on discomfort rather than purpose. The more you complain, the less you exercise courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom, the very qualities that define a strong life. He believed gratitude is the antidote to complaint. Gratitude reorients the mind to what remains rather than what is missing. When we complain, we focus on scarcity, on loss, on what we feel entitled to. Marcus trained himself to notice the resources that remain: reason, strength, choice, breath. These are constants even in chaos. Complaining obscures them. Gratitude reveals them. Life, Marcus reminded himself, is fleeting. Every day spent narrating grievances is a day wasted in resentment. Complaints extend suffering, stretching it like a shadow across memory. Gratitude, in contrast, contracts time. It concentrates attention on the present moment, on what can be acted upon now. Complaints disperse it. Marcus also understood that complaining poisons experience. When you narrate hardship, you are no longer fully living it. Pain becomes performance. Discomfort becomes a story. Life passes while you rehearse your protests. Marcus believed that true living requires presence, not protest. He wrote that every obstacle carries a lesson. Complaining hides the lesson beneath emotional noise. If you resist the discomfort, you resist learning. If you accept it without complaint, you extract insight, resilience, and clarity. Every hardship becomes a teacher. Complaints become the refusal to attend class. He also connected complaint to fear of insignificance. People complain to assert that they matter, that their suffering is noticed, that their hardship is justified. Marcus, however, found significance in action, not in attention. Doing what is right, enduring what must be endured, and cultivating virtue, this is where meaning resides. Complaints distract from that purpose. Marcus Aurelius considered complaints a distraction from life itself. They waste energy, corrupt focus, and erode the joy that comes from aligning with nature. Nature gives us challenges, but it also gives us the capacity to meet them. Complaining denies that capacity. He reminded himself repeatedly, external events are neutral. They are like raw clay. How you shape them depends entirely on your inner discipline. Complaints leave the clay untouched. Acceptance, reason, and courage mold it into character. In his reflections, Marcus emphasized that a mind free from complaint is lighter, clearer, and stronger. It sees hardship as temporary, manageable, and instructive. It responds instead of reacts. It builds rather than breaks. Complaints, he believed, reverse all of this. They entangle the mind in unnecessary suffering and rob it of freedom. Finally, Marcus taught that living fully means embracing reality as it is. Complaints deny reality. They insist on a world reshaped by desire. The Stoic, by contrast, cultivates inner freedom within the reality that exists. Complaints, no matter how eloquent, are chains. Acceptance is liberation. Marcus Aurelius believed that complaining is a betrayal of reason. Reason is the faculty that allows humans to distinguish what is within their control from what is not, to act according to virtue, and to see life clearly. Complaints, by contrast, cloud judgment. They anchor the mind to illusion, insisting that the world is unfair, that events should bend to preference, that pain is a personal injustice. He reminded himself constantly that life does not conspire against him. The universe is indifferent, operating according to its laws. Complaining is the mind declaring war on reality itself, as if your displeasure could alter the cosmos. Marcus considered this both foolish and harmful. Reason is the compass. Complaints are distractions that spin the compass needle. He understood that the mind has limited energy. Complaining consumes it without producing results. Every minute spent narrating injustice, discomfort, or misfortune is a minute diverted from thought, action, and growth. Marcus wrote that one should reserve the mind for what can be improved, not for what cannot. Complaints squander this sacred resource. Marcus also connected complaining with the illusion of control. When we complain, we act as if our words could bend reality. Stoicism teaches that control lies in judgment, intention, and action. Complaints confuse power with protest. The more you protest reality, the less you exercise true power. He often reminded himself that hardship is unavoidable. Illness, loss, betrayal, and death are constants. Complaining treats them as aberrations. Stoic wisdom treats them as features of life. Complaining is like resisting the tides, exhausting and futile. Acceptance is learning to sail. Marcus believed that complaints create a distorted memory. When you dwell on wrongs and discomforts, you store them in your mind like anchors. They weigh down future perception, making you more sensitive, less resilient. By refusing complaint, he trained his mind to store experience as learning, not grievance. He also understood how complaints distort relationships. People resent those who constantly protest reality, blame circumstances, or magnify suffering. Complaining isolates. Acceptance builds trust, cooperation, and respect. The Stoic must not only master the self, but also navigate the social world with clarity. Marcus Aurelius saw complaining as a barrier to wisdom. Wisdom requires calm observation, reasoned analysis, and thoughtful action. Complaints create emotional noise, preventing insight. A mind that complains is a mind that judges poorly, acts impulsively, and misunderstands reality. He framed life as a school of virtue. Every event, person, and hardship is a teacher. Complaining closes the ears, focusing only on imagined injury rather than lesson. Acceptance opens the ears and the heart, revealing what is to be learned and applied. Finally, Marcus reminded himself that a complaint changes nothing but leaves the soul weaker. To resist complaint is to exercise reason, fortitude, and self-mastery. This is why he regarded complaining not merely as an irritation, but as a form of inner betrayal, a choice to let weakness flourish instead of strength. Marcus Aurelius believed that complaining is a failure to live according to nature. Nature gives each human the capacity to reason, to endure, to act in accordance with virtue. Complaints, however, arise when we resist the path that nature has set for us. They are signs that the mind refuses its own design, that it seeks comfort over character, ease over excellence. He often reflected that life itself is a series of challenges, each tailored to the capacity ties we already possess. Complaining denies this alignment. It treats the challenge as an imposition rather than an opportunity. Marcus saw every difficulty as a chance to exercise patience, courage, and wisdom. Complaints are wasted energy that weakens this practice. Marcus also recognized that complaining is a refusal of purpose. Every human has a role, a function within the whole. Complaints, whether whispered internally or spoken aloud, declare, "I reject my role, I reject the work I was made to do." To Marcus, this was more destructive than any external obstacle because it turns the mind against itself. He reminded himself that the world does not adjust to desire. Trees do not complain that the sun is hot. Rivers do not protest that the rocks are in their path. Humans alone have the power to resist or accept. Complaints are a denial of this power. Acceptance, by contrast, is the embrace of one's proper function. Marcus observed that people often complain about hardship because they measure it against imagined ease. They believe life should be pleasant, smooth, predictable. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Life is naturally filled with challenge. Complaints arise from expecting the unnatural. Wisdom is seeing things as they are. He often wrote to himself that discomfort is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. Complaints create suffering where none need exist. They exaggerate difficulty, magnify irritation, and distort perception. The Stoic mind sees difficulty clearly, acknowledges it, and moves through it without extra weight. Marcus also connected complaints to the illusion of entitlement. Humans naturally seek comfort, recognition, and ease. Complaints claim that these are owed. Marcus refused this logic. Nature owes nothing. Life gives what is necessary to grow. Complaints demand what is unnecessary, and in doing so weaken character. He taught that every challenge is an opportunity to practice excellence. Complaints waste that opportunity, replacing action with distraction, virtue with grievance, strength with weakness. The Stoic sees life as a gym for the mind, not a battlefield to lament. Complaints remove the weights from the hands and leave the body untrained. Finally, Marcus Aurelius believed that refusing to complain is a declaration of alignment with reality. It is the conscious decision to live according to reason, to accept one's role, and to act purposefully in every circumstance. To complain is to reject this alignment. To accept is to participate fully in the design of life. Marcus Aurelius understood that a life free from complaint is a life fully lived. Every hardship endured without protest strengthens character, sharpens judgment, and cultivates virtue. Complaints, by contrast, create weakness, distort perception, and drain the energy needed for meaningful action. For Marcus, this was not theoretical, it was practical. Strength, wisdom, and freedom arise only when the mind refuses to yield to grievance. He wrote that the universe is vast, indifferent, and lawful. Nothing in it is designed to harm you personally. Complaining assumes otherwise. Complaining personalizes events, inflates their impact, and diminishes your ability to respond rationally. Acceptance, on the other hand, restores perspective. It allows you to see each event as part of the larger order and to act accordingly. Marcus believed that the purpose of human life is to exercise virtue in accordance with reason. Complaints are distractions from this purpose. They anchor attention in the past or future, in what is missing rather than what can be done. To live rightly is to focus on action, not protest. To complain is to surrender agency. To accept is to reclaim it. He also understood the contagious nature of complaint. A complaining mind influences others, spreading irritation, resentment, and weakness. Leaders, he knew, must model endurance and calm. By refusing to complain, Marcus preserved not only his own mind but the well-being of those around him. Strength multiplies when exercised, weakness does too. Marcus often reflected that death, loss, and hardship are inevitable. Complaining extends suffering, as if the mind could resist the natural order. Acceptance shortens it, by meeting reality squarely and moving through it without added resistance. In this he saw true freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom within it. He believed that complaining betrays time itself. Every moment spent in grievance is a moment wasted in judgment and irritation rather than learning and action. Life is too short to squander energy on the stories of suffering. Energy, to Marcus, must be devoted to virtue, to purpose, and to meaningful engagement with reality. Ultimately, Marcus Aurelius taught that strength is internal mastery. Complaints cede that mastery to events, silence in the face of hardship, reason in the face of difficulty, and courage in the face of fear. This is the essence of Stoic life. Complaining is the antithesis. It diminishes, distracts, and enslaves. Acceptance empowers, clarifies, and liberates. He also showed that living without complaint creates a kind of serenity. A mind not arguing with reality is free to focus on what matters: growth, virtue, service, and inner peace. Complaints obscure these priorities. Acceptance illuminates them. Marcus lived as if every event, however harsh, was an opportunity to practice excellence. His teachings remind us that we are responsible for our response, not the events themselves. Complaining shifts responsibility away. Acceptance reclaims it. Strength grows when we act. Weakness grows when we protest. This, above all, was the core of his philosophy. In the final analysis, Marcus Aurelius teaches that complaints are voluntary chains. Freedom, purpose, and character are gained only when we refuse to fasten them. Life will always challenge. Pain will always arrive. People will always fail. And circumstances will always shift. To complain is optional. To live fully, with virtue and reason, is imperative. This is why Marcus Aurelius considered complaining a form of weakness, not merely the absence of comfort, but the surrender of the mind to illusion, fear, and resentment. To rise above complaint is to rise to the full stature of human potential. To endure, to act, and to accept, that is true strength.